Good morning, everyone, and thank you all for being here. My name is Charla Lair, and I am the lead strategist for Open Scholarship at Lyrasis. I'm honored to be joined by my brilliant colleagues as we share what we are working on together and why it matters for the future of scholarly publishing. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the conference's code of conduct shown here. It reminds us to engage with one another with respect, generosity, and professionalism throughout our discussions today. And to ensure that this session is accessible for everyone, please use microphones and introduce yourselves with your name and affiliation. And we, as speakers, will repeat all questions before responding. More research is openly accessible than ever, yet much of that openness comes at a cost. Publishing fees, prestige hierarchies, and profit-centered systems still determine which research is visible, whose voices are heard, and what knowledge is considered valuable. The system favors those with resources, shaping scholarship around wealth and prestige. Scholarly publishing does not exist apart from us. Every choice we make, what we support, what we sustain and prioritize, shapes whose knowledge is seen, whose voices are amplified, and what the system values. For decades, those choices have reinforced hierarchies of prestige, profit, and access. The future does not have to mirror the past. We can choose to cultivate a system guided by openness, equity, and collective stewardship, where scholarship exists as a shared public good. What might that look like? Imagine a future where knowledge belongs to everyone, not to markets or prestige. In this world, publishing is a shared endeavor. Libraries, scholars, disciplinary communities, and university-based publishers come together to shape the tools, infrastructure, and practices that carry research from creator to reader. Decisions are guided by transparency, equity, and care, ensuring that we produce and preserve, and we strengthen disciplines, we serve communities, and contribute to that public good. In this future, knowledge moves freely, carried across communities and disciplines. Open technologies and shared standards provide the tools that allow people to create, share, and preserve research in a way that meets their needs. Resources sustain multilingual scholarship, support fair compensation for editors and reviewers, and actually foster collaboration. They open space for new forms of storytelling and peer review, allowing research to speak to local communities while connecting with global audiences. Every choice, every practice contributes to a system where scholarship grows stronger, more vibrant, and more meaningful for all who rely on it. While this vision may seem ambitious and maybe a bit audacious, it is not purely theoretical. Many elements of this ideal already exist in practice through Diamond Open Access initiatives across the world, including the United States. Diamond Open Access is often defined in economic terms, free to read and free to publish, but it is so much more than that. It is not a business model. It is a framework for scholarly publishing built on equity, transparency, and community. Diamond Open Access embodies the values that have driven the open access movement from the beginning, with emphasis of collaboration over competition, care over control, and openness over exclusion. It asks us to reimagine scholarship not as a commodity to be bought and sold, but as a shared public good. Diamond Open Access has long existed in the United States, often in the quiet corners of academia, scholar-led initiatives, library publishing programs, disciplinary societies, and university presses that prioritize mission and community over profit. These efforts may not always be visible beyond the communities that sustain them, yet they have built an alternative foundation for knowledge exchange, one rooted in community rather than competition. The emergence and endurance of Diamond Open Access in the United States reflects something fundamental about the higher education system in this country, its highly decentralized and uneven nature. Funding comes from federal agencies, state systems, private foundations, and tuition revenue, but these resources are distributed unevenly. Some universities have deep endowments and extensive research infrastructure, while many others operate with minimal support. STEM disciplines often attract substantial funding, whereas humanities and social sciences must accomplish more with less. In this fragmented environment, there is no single coordinating body, no national strategy, and no shared infrastructure for open access. Diamond Open Access did not grow in spite of this decentralization, it grew because of it. Progress depends on local initiative, imagination, and perseverance, with communities and individuals filling gaps and creating opportunities where they have a need. Diamond Open Access thrives on ingenuity and innovation. The absence of a single center in the United States has created space for new ideas to take root. A library publisher may collaborate with faculty to launch a new disciplinary journal. An academic department may sustain a niche publication with minimal resources. An editorial board may step away from a profit-centered publisher to launch a community-centered journal. As Dr. Martin Paul Eve observed about Diamond Open Access communities, people see a need, they get off their backsides and put it into action, a new journal is born. That spirit of autonomy, stewardship, and collaborative commitment is not only the fuel of Diamond Open Access, but one could argue it is what fosters ideas, creativity, and collaboration, the lifeblood of scholarship, the engine of research that addresses pressing challenges, and a force for making the world a better place. Diamond Open Access in the United States has grown into a rich tapestry of initiatives, yet available data captures only part of the story. For example, with journal publishing, the Directory of Open Access Journals lists roughly 600 Diamond journals in the United States, though the real number may be 2 to 3 times higher. Many remain uncounted and largely invisible outside the communities that sustain them. Behind these journals are library publishers who have nurtured Diamond publishing for more than 2 decades, academic departments and research centers keeping journals alive through local support, societies and university presses sustaining titles alongside traditional portfolios, and scholar-led initiatives bravely amplifying underrepresented voices. Together, they form a patchwork ecosystem, largely unseen, decentralized, and uneven, but alive, resilient, and sustaining equitable, community-driven scholarship. Today, this work unfolds against a backdrop of turbulence. Higher education faces financial pressures, declining enrollment, ideological interference, and eroding public trust. The very idea of the university as a public good, as a space for free inquiry, civic engagement, and shared knowledge is under scrutiny. Profit-centered publishing models continue to define prestige, visibility, and legitimacy, leaving community-led efforts to operate on the margins. Yet, within this turbulence, there is opportunity. Diamond Open Access has always endured when systems falter. Its survival is not accidental. It reflects deliberate, value-driven choices, local initiative, and collective care. Persistence keeps it alive, but intention allows it to grow. Slowly but surely, coordinated efforts to support Diamond Open Access are beginning to take shape in the United States. Consortial communities are exploring ways to sustain Diamond publishing more strategically and systematically. Libraries and university presses are forging new collaborations, and organizations supporting Diamond Open Access are beginning to connect and engage in meaningful dialogue, building networks and efforts to strengthen the ecosystem. Diamond Open Access can be more than a refuge for idealists. It can serve as a foundation for renewal, a living demonstration that scholarship can thrive outside structures designed for profit and prestige. By removing paywalls, decentering profit, and enabling community-led publishing, it represents both a practical framework and a philosophical reorientation from scholarship as a commodity to scholarship as a shared public good. If we want to see Diamond Open Access flourish as more than a patchwork of local initiatives, if we want it to become a resilient, visible, and sustainable part of the U.S. scholarly ecosystem, we will have to rally together. No one is coming to build this for us. The future of Diamond Open Access in the United States will depend on the choices we make, how we recognize, connect, and invest in the communities that are already doing the work. This ecosystem cannot be fully understood through metrics alone. Its labor is invisible, its reach uneven, its infrastructure decentralized. But its significance is not in what it measures, but in what it sustains. Communities, ideas, and practices that demonstrate a different way of caring for knowledge. Understanding Diamond Open Access in this way invites us to look past surface level measures and consider its broader significance. Not just how many journals or books exist, but what they enable. New ideas, new communities, and a publishing system shaped by values rather than market forces. But as always, there is more to this story, which leads us to the next part of our discussion. To explore who drives this work, what sustains it, and what it will take to nurture and strengthen it, I will now hand things over to Catherine.
Thank you, Charla. Charla is the inspiration piece, and I'm the let's get real piece. So I'm Catherine Mitchell. I'm the Director of Publishing, Archives, and Digitization at the California Digital Library at the University of California, and I'm a Diamond Open Access Journals publisher. Echoing Charla, Diamond Open Access leads with its values. You can see its values. They are powerful values, and as you can see, they make a very pleasing word cloud, which emphasizes its equitable no-fee model that enables researchers in low-resource institutions and regions to participate in the production of the scholarly record, its emphasis on community-led and academic-centric governance, editorial practices, and infrastructure, all of which are often operated and or funded by academic institutions, scholarly communities, or research networks, its support for a multilingual and culturally inclusive ecosystem, fostering bibliodiversity and enabling knowledge sharing across linguistic and cultural boundaries, and its adherence to the principles of open science and the public good, prioritizing scholarly integrity, transparency, collaboration, and access over profit. It's harder to make a word cloud representing the value of Diamond Open Access, precisely because our perceptions of value within academic publishing are so deeply entrenched in the singular logic of the commercial publishing marketplace, namely efficiency, scale, and impact. That is certainly one way to measure value, but we need to create new and compelling ways of thinking about value that aren't byproducts of a profit-driven transactional relationship. We need to find ways of articulating the value of Diamond Open Access on its own terms. But what are those terms? I'd like to propose that we start with the following. Diamond Open Access amplifies institutional priorities by providing dedicated publishing services tuned to the goals of specific academic units and communities, as well as dedicated support for faculty and students, both as authors, reporting on individual findings, and as, for example, journal or book editors shaping disciplines. Diamond Open Access also protects academic freedom and independence by situating power and authority with scholars rather than multinational corporations. It reduces barriers to entry by charging no fees to publish, as Charlotte mentioned, resulting in a more complete scholarly record that represents perspectives which might otherwise be silenced within the global scholarly community. This, in turn, results in a broader network effect across academia, where value resides precisely in the conversations that are sparked and sustained across institutions. Diamond Open Access also helps diversify our investment in the future of scholarly communication by operating in spaces where other publishing models don't adequately serve the community. For example, places where scale is explicitly not the measure of success or relevance. And last but not least, Diamond Open Access is widely regarded as a more sustainable publishing model. But what do we mean, really, when we say that Diamond Open Access is more sustainable? Certainly, its publishing costs are significantly lower than those associated with large commercial publishers who are seeking profits for their shareholders. The budgets of Diamond Open Access publishers and their journals are truly negligible in comparison. But are these negligible budgets a mark of sustainability or the consequence of deeply inadequate resourcing? I'd like to suggest that we need to take a harder look at how we use this term sustainability and what its implications are for Diamond Open Access. In general parlance, the word sustainable is taken to mean supportable over the long term. In other words, if a program is sustainable, its resourcing is both matched to its needs and likely to continue without interruption. In its more precise usage, though, sustainability generally refers to a set of characteristics that derive from and are informed by the three pillars pictured here in various forms. From the Charter for the UCLA Sustainability Committee, drawing on the UNESCO definition, for example, sustainability is defined as, quote, the integration of environmental health, social equity, and economic vitality in order to create thriving, healthy, diverse, and resilient communities for this generation and generations to come. The practice of sustainability recognizes how these issues are interconnected and requires a systems approach and an acknowledgement of complexity, end quote. We need to challenge ourselves to resist the impulse, I would argue, to speak of something as sustainable based only on its economic vitality. It turns out there is a complicated web of interactions among these three pillars of the environment, society, and the economy that we should be holding ourselves accountable to when we use this word and when we think about the future of scholarly communication and the future of our world. Diamond Open Access has much to recommend it within this broader paradigm of sustainability, no question. But we also owe it to ourselves to explore both this promise and the limitations of this open access model as currently realized within the United States, and to think about how we might work toward better understanding and addressing those limitations. Diamond Open Access is deeply rooted as a publishing model in the advancement of social equity, one of these pillars. We should celebrate that. But it also struggles to realize the potential of that commitment within the broader context of the scholarly communication ecosystem. For example, Diamond Open Access functions as an incubator for new ideas in advance of broader scholarly buy-in, but it can also be difficult to establish that buy-in over time without adequate recognition or visibility of these materials. Diamond Open Access situates publications within a knowledge-sharing economy that's focused on global access rather than gating. But traditional academic publishing is still largely driven by a prestige economy that, by definition, is both exclusive and highly valued. Diamond Open Access funding models shields publications from commercial and political incentives that might compromise their academic freedom and independence, but commercially or politically valuable publications are often far better resourced than those that prioritize academic freedom. And Diamond Open Access is, as we have discussed, driven by values and a strong commitment to the public good. But unfortunately, many academic authors are incentivized primarily to prioritize personal advancement over the public good. Similarly, with regard to economic vitality, Diamond Open Access offers enormous promise as a pathway to open access that is not yet captured by commercial for-profit interests. We should celebrate that. But we shouldn't pretend that this pathway is without its own complexities. For example, Diamond Open Access, as I have mentioned, is far less costly than commercial publishing. But in addition to embodying grit and commitment, its lack of resourcing as a result of these low costs also means that Diamond Open Access publications can encounter difficulties in trying to ensure discoverability, best practices, scaling, and sustaining operations over time. As another example, we find in Diamond Open Access the ethical paradox of the labor of love. On the one hand, Diamond Open Access allows for volunteer labor of love publications to often miraculously spring forth in poorly resourced areas and disciplines. But the passionate commitment to a labor of love also masks the invisible, unpaid labor behind such a project, which itself raises equity issues. Who can afford, and frankly, who has the capacity to work for free? And finally, Diamond Open Access's signature feature, its equitable approach to no-fee publishing, is a laudable and important corrective to an APC-based funding model that is neither equitable nor feasible for many authors. But does this alternative approach merely exacerbate existing resourcing and positional inequalities within scholarly communication by creating a second-class publication system for those who cannot afford to participate in the first-class one? I'll end my part simply by saying, as uncomfortable as all these reflections are, I believe we must engage with them in all their paradox and contradiction if we wish to move to a future in which Diamond Open Access can sustainably realize its enormous potential and address its insufficiencies. Thanks. And now on to Kate.
Hello, I'm Kate McCready. I am the Program Director for Open Publishing at the Big Ten Academic Alliance. And I work there on strengthening university-based publishing through collective action and facilitating collective investment in open access content and infrastructure. And whereas Charla is the vision and Catherine is the critical critique, I am the practical. So they have provided a vision and critique of Diamond Open Access publishing that's based on values where scholarship, like utilities, is a public good, where it's sustainable, not based on labors of love, but work that is credited and compensated. But that vision is born during a time of turbulence. Higher education is going through an existential crisis. So what do we do with this jumble of ideas? Not sure how to make that go up. So in order to make a plan, to realize a vision, we're starting from the beginning. We need to have a better understanding of the current state. We need that because currently the landscape of Diamond Open Access publishing in the US remains largely unknown, as they've said. So recent studies have explored the landscape of Diamond Open Access, but they haven't been fully inclusive of the United States. So as we became increasingly interested in the possibilities that Diamond Open Access publishing offers, we realized that there's a lot that we don't know yet about the US landscape, but that we could lean into the methodologies for the research that's been conducted in other parts of the world. We aren't starting from scratch. So what don't we know yet? We don't know how many Diamond US publishers there are, or what types of organizations they're aligned with. What infrastructures are being used? What are the platforms, the tools, and systems that are being employed? How are these publishers being resourced? What labor is paid for, and what requires volunteers? What are their challenges? What is causing them to not fulfill their goals? What are their strengths? What can we all build on that we know works well? What opportunities exist? What investments are needed? What ideas does this community have for securing those investments? And what are the policies that relate to Diamond Open Access Publishing? So because of all these questions, we determined that there is a need for a national study, an environmental scan of the U.S. Diamond OA landscape to map existing infrastructure, identify policy and investment needs, surface sector-wide challenges and opportunities, and co-develop a strategic framework for funder action. So with huge thanks to the Gates Foundation, we're happy to announce today that we're launching a 16-month project to assess the current Diamond Open Access publishing environment. Understanding the current Diamond Open Access landscape is not an end in itself. It is a means of preparing for what comes next. By answering foundational questions, who is publishing Diamond OA, how are they doing it, what stands in their way, this study will provide the evidence base needed to design effective interventions, policies, and support mechanisms. It will also help to strengthen the community of stakeholders who are performing this work. Through many great organizations and initiatives, the Diamond Open Access Publishing stakeholders are aware of each other, and our hope is that this study helps build additional connection points. So our goal of the landscape assessment is to generate timely, credible insights that support policy, funding, and infrastructure decisions aligned with the project's theory of change that Charlotte and Catherine discussed. So you might be asking now, so how are you going to accomplish this task? So for that, I'm going to turn the podium over to my colleague, Emily Goff, a consultant with expertise in the evaluation of and strategy for complex dynamic systems.
Thank you, Kate. So we've heard about the vision, we've heard about the challenges, and we've heard about the questions that were brought to this study. And so now I'm going to talk a little bit about the methodology, the timeline, and the deliverables of this national landscape analysis. So the entire methodology was designed using utilization-focused evaluation approaches. And the idea with that is that the study is being conducted not just to generate some interesting data, but really to advance a theory of change. And it's a theory of change that ends with fundable infrastructure change. So to do that, we're going to be using a variety of mixed methods that are listed here. The core and first big push will be a national survey of the Diamond OA actors, the players in this landscape. We'll also be looking at the outputs of Diamond Open Access Publishing. We'll be talking to people through interviews and focus groups, and then generating some case studies of what Diamond Open Access looks like at different scales around the world. Over the next 16 months, we really have the luxury of time to do this right. So we have time for the design and discovery period. That started on November 1st, so we are really just getting started. We'll then have a long period for data collection, but what I hope you'll notice on this slide is that we have time also for synthesis and co-creation, really for taking the data that we're collecting at the beginning of this and making meaning of it, using it again to advance through that theory of change. And then again, time and space and resources for reporting and dissemination. The outputs that we are proposing to generate through this are very purposeful. First, it's a national map and data set of Diamond Open Access publishers and models, and I am so excited about that. I can see it. We'll also have a report, ta-da! So a report and presentation, but we'll tell you what we learned. So we'll be sharing those the stakeholder perspectives, the landscape analysis, and then strategic recommendations that come from really socializing this and being in conversation across the ecosystem. And we'll also have a public dissemination package with the reports, briefs, and data for reuse and advocacy that hopefully will, again, be supporting the growth, be supporting whatever it is that Diamond Open Access is and can be for scholarly publishing in the United States. All right.
Thank you.
We have time. time for questions?
Yeah, we have time.
Yeah, we
Do have time for
We
questions.
intentionally built some time in for questions. So data collection starts now.